oftentimes sports car manufacturers will have entry-level models, which is always considered a bit of a joke given their price point, but they are the bottom of the hierarchy on these manufacturers. Things like the Ferrari Portofino, or the 911 Carrera, or my personal favorite of these worst of the best, air quotes, is the Lamborghini Huracan. The Gallardo was Lamborghini's first real financial success, with over 14,000 sold during its production run. So obviously, they had to make a sequel. A sequel that was revealed in 2014, the Huracan. As with all Lambos, it was named after a legendary fighting bull, and it had an evolved version of the 5.2-liter naturally aspirated V10 from the Gallardo. But now it made 602 horsepower that was then sent to an Audi-designed four-wheel drive system. So it was the most sensible Lamborghini ever up to that point. Which I know isn't saying much for a mid-engine V10 supercar that cost $200,000, but hey, it had a 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, which meant it was actually better in the transmission department than its big brother, the Aventador. For some reason, the Aventador still has a single clutch, but the Huracan has a dual clutch, which means it's a lot less jolty, a lot smoother, which means it can do 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. Sure, the aggressive angles give it the same drag coefficient as a 1997 Honda Odyssey, but it can still rocket up to 191 miles an hour. And thanks to Audi's fantastic four-wheel drive system and a rear-biased differential, there really isn't much understeer. It certainly doesn't handle like an Odyssey. I mean, it has magnetohortical dampers, or magnetic suspension, or MagneRide, if you're a reasonable person who happens to live in America. But critically, this incredibly difficult to pronounce technology keeps the car level and controlled during cornering G-forces. It was a great car, and it followed in the success of the Gallardo, being their best-selling model until the Urus in 2019. But this is Lamborghini. If they don't make 5,000 different variants, is it really a Lamborghini? So first, there was the Spider. Then there was a police variant, to replace the Gallardo police variants from days gone by. The next was the Aveo, then there was a detuned cheaper variant for some reason, and then there was the Performante. The Performante was a handling-focused Huracan, which meant that the straight-line speed elements all stayed the same, but the cornering got significantly faster. Partially because the Performante got carbon fiber parts from the legendary Sesto Elemento, partially because the suspension was retuned and lowered, and stiffer, but mostly it was better through the corners because of the Aerodynamica Lamborghini Attiva system. The new ALA was an active aero system that had flaps to direct airflow to the rear wing unless the driver pressed a button, in which case it shot the air out of the back of the car past the flaps, kind of like a DRS system on Formula 1 cars. Now when it isn't in DRS mode, the Performante produces 750% more downforce than the normal Huracan. That's not really saying much when the original Huracan was more form over function, but this one is definitely function and form. It showed this by setting the Nürburgring lap record in 2016 at 6 minutes and 52 seconds, finally dethroning the Porsche 918 hypercar, which had previously held the record for 3 years. And that was pretty much the status quo for a few years. You had their base models, you had your Spiders, and you had your Performante for handling, and it kept that way all the way until 2018 when the refreshed Huracan came out, and it was called the Evo. It was basically a Performante without the crazy rear wing and softer suspension. So it made 631 horsepower with a new titanium exhaust that sounds even better than the 2014 model. The new Evo also has four-wheel steering to make the turn-in even faster than the original Audi four-wheel drive system. And again, like the base model from 2014, the Evo had a string of very similar, not very interesting to talk about variants, like the detuned rear-wheel drive and detuned rear-wheel drive Spider models, but one really stood out from the crowd: the Super Trofeo Omologato. The Huracan STO ditched the Evo name because it was an evolution of the Evo. Personally, I would have preferred Lamborghini to do Evo squared for their name because it's Lamborghini and that's just kind of fun. But STO definitely fits. It was based off their Super Trofeo race car, and it took the Huracan to its most extreme track tune yet. So it's a rear-wheel drive Huracan that is not detuned, which means its naturally aspirated V10 sends the full 631 horsepower to the rear wheels. Now, in order to be the most efficient road racer you can possibly get, it should be cooled down as much as possible, which is why Lamborghini sculpted a massive snorkel into the roofline, and they then incorporated a rear fin into the snorkel to improve airflow and high-speed stability, again like an LMP car or an F1 racer. The rear wing itself is taller to lift the airflow into the clean air, which contributes to the half a ton of downforce the STO can produce at speed. And then, to keep the F1 train rolling, it has carbon ceramic brakes and racing harnesses. The carbon treatment was continued as Lamborghini ditched this whole hood thing and replaced it with a full carbon fiber clamshell. I mean, it's the closest thing Lamborghini has made to a road legal race car. It looks super aggressive, it is incredibly fast, it's one of the best Lamborghinis in years. It reminds me of the Gallardo Balboni, only much more intense on the styling department. I think it's fantastic, and it really harkens to Lamborghini's success in motorsport. So let's talk about that for a second. You see, Lamborghini has their own one-leg racing series, the Super Trofeo Championship, but Lamborghini took it a step further and entered a GT3 variant into IMSA, specifically the WeatherTech Sports Car Championships GTU class. They have never gone endurance racing before. In fact, they've never really gone racing before. I know they made a few Diablo prototypes back in the day, but it didn't really do a whole lot. Now, despite this lack of experience, Lamborghini started out strong with a class win at the 24 Hours of Daytona and another one at the 12 Hours of Sebring, making them the first endurance wins in the history of Lamborghini. Then another win came in Laguna Seca, and 3 more podiums secured Lamborghini the GTU Championship by 2 points ahead of Acura after a very close season-long fight. They got the championship on the first try. They only got 2 more wins for the rest of their career, and they haven't had any more championships, but still, first try, IMSA GTU champions. Not bad, Lamborghini, not bad. So, that is pretty much where we leave the Huracan right now, is what I would be saying, if not for a necessary contradiction I have to make. Because remember how I said that the STO is my favorite Lamborghini in years? That title lasted approximately 1 year, when the Sterrato came out. Because the Sterrato has nothing to do with endurance racing or Super Trofeo. In fact, they literally cannot be farther apart. Now, it needs some context, so in 2019, Lamborghini looked at Audi's old Nanook Quattro concept and decided to give it an Italian refresh, calling it the Sterrato. It was basically a lifted, all-wheel drive, off-road focused Huracan Evo concept car. That meant 630 horsepower in a mid-engine supercar. Only this supercar swapped track tires for 20-inch knobby off-road racing tires, replaced the hood vents with rally fog lights, and put skid plates underneath instead of diffusers. It's also wider, with bolt-on arches to fit the off-road racing tires. But no one would be stupid enough, ridiculous enough, crazy enough to put that into production, right? Well, it's Lamborghini, ridiculousness is kind of their thing, so the Sterrato went into full production for 2022, which meant that combined with the Porsche 911 Dakar and the Morgan CXT, we have the makings of a very strange rally championship. I mean, the Sterrato is perfect Lamborghini lunacy. Big V10 engine, ridiculous styling, and doing something that Ferrari would never even think of doing without sending a cease and desist letter. The Sterrato is also notable for being the last purely internal combustion engine powered Lamborghini to ever release. Everything after the Huracan Sterrato will have some kind of hybrid assistance. But if the Cyan, Revolto, and Sterrato are anything to go by, I don't think we have to worry about Lamborghini losing their style anytime soon.